Imagine a young, handsome prince who was the epitome of perfection. They called him the Golden Prince, and all of England adored him. But who would have thought that in a few years this charming young man would turn into a brutal ruler, ready to destroy an entire empire for love? This is the story of Henry VIII, one of England's most famous kings. When Henry was young, he was considered the perfect prince. He was handsome, tall, well-educated, and well-versed in the arts and sciences. The people adored him, for at that time no one suspected that he would become a tyrant. Henry did not even plan to become king. His older brother Arthur was heir to the throne, and Henry was preparing for a life as a priest. But everything changed when Arthur died suddenly, leaving Henry heir to the crown at the age of 17. This is how his incredible and sometimes shocking story began, which soon led to Henry completely turning the country upside down for one woman. Watch the video to the end to see how he went from hero to monster and what led to his downfall. Imagine a king who had been married for 24 years and all that time had failed at the most important thing, the birth of an heir. Henry VIII was desperately waiting for a son to continue his lineage, but his wife, Queen Catherine of Aragon, could not give him an heir. She gave birth to 8 children, but only one daughter, Mary, survived. Imagine the king's frustration at seeing his dynasty come to an end. He began to look for a way out, and he found it in another woman. That woman was Anne Boleyn, a young and ambitious courtier. But she was different from all of Henry's previous mistresses. When the king offered her to be his favorite, she said a firm no. Anne made one condition: she would only be his wife. And it was this no that ignited an even greater fire in the king. Anne's refusal made her for Henry not just desirable, but an almost unattainable dream. The king found himself in a mad love triangle. On the one hand, faithful and devoted Catherine, who, despite everything, did not want to let her husband go. On the other was Anne, who refused to play by the rules of the court. Henry became so obsessed with Anna that he was ready to go against the church and destroy the foundations of the state. And who would have thought that love could blind a man so much that he would change the course of history for her sake? But what happened to Anne Boleyn when her dream came true? How did her no become the beginning of her demise? A break with the Roman Catholic Church. Henry VIII was willing to do anything to marry Anne Boleyn, but he faced a huge problem. To do so, he had to divorce Catherine of Aragon. And of course, ordinary people were forbidden to divorce by the church. But Henry wasn't just any man. He was a king, and he thought he could achieve anything. So he appealed to the most powerful man of the time, the Pope, to have the marriage annulled. However, the Pope answered with a firm no. Why? It was much more complicated than a simple divorce. Catherine of Aragon was not only Henry's wife, but also the aunt of Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, the most powerful ruler in Europe. The Pope could not risk angering Charles, so he refused Henry. This decision was a watershed moment. The king, blinded by his love and pride, could not accept the refusal. Then he took a step that changed the history of England. He severed all ties with the Roman Catholic Church and declared himself head of the new Anglican Church. It was a move that shook the whole country. He ordered the execution of anyone who disagreed with his decision, including his close friend and advisor Thomas More, who dared to go against the king. This break with the church not only gave Henry the right to divorce, but also changed the religious life of England forever. But was it a victory for Henry? And what happened to those who opposed his new laws? The fate of Anne Boleyn, the fall of a favorite. Anne Boleyn won Henry VIII's heart, and for her sake he went to great lengths. He broke off his marriage to Catherine of Aragon, severed relations with the Roman Catholic Church, and put his reputation on the line. But what happened after Anne became queen? And how did her destiny, full of triumph, turn to tragedy? When Anne finally married Henry, he was sure she would give him his long-awaited son. But it didn't happen. Anne gave birth to only one daughter, the future great Queen Elizabeth I. Henry, however, was disappointed. He was desperately waiting for an heir who could continue his dynasty. This was the beginning of its downfall. Henry, who had once been willing to do anything for her, began to lose interest in her. But that wasn't enough to bring about her downfall. Anne found herself at the center of court intrigue and accusations. She was accused of treason, witchcraft, and even incest with her own brother. Although many historians believe that these accusations were false and fabricated, this did not save Anne. Henry signed the order for her execution. Anne Boleyn was executed in 1536, just 3 years after she became queen. Imagine how quickly she rose and how precipitously she fell. Her life is a tragic story where love and power can be a death trap. And what happened to Anne's daughter, Elizabeth, who later became one of England's most powerful queens? Implications. Henry VIII's love for Anne Boleyn changed not only his personal life, but also the entire history of England. His passion led to devastating consequences for the kingdom: a break with the Catholic Church, executions, intrigue. All these were the result of his obsession. But what happened afterward? What marks did his decisions leave on England's future? In the last years of his life, Henry VIII was no longer the Golden Prince he had once been known as. He had become a heavy and sickly man, weighing almost 180 pounds. His legs were covered in sores that would not heal, and pain accompanied him constantly. This physical condition became a symbol of his ruined empire. Henry dreamed of an heir to carry on his legacy, but his personal life and love decisions left the country in chaos. After his death, the throne was alternately occupied by his children, Edward VI, Mary I, and Elizabeth I. Each of them, in their own way, tried to right their father's wrongs. Edward continued reforms, Mary tried to bring back Catholicism, and Elizabeth became a symbol of the new independent England. It was she, Anne Boleyn's daughter, who proved that Henry's succession was much more complicated than just a power struggle. Not only did she retain the throne, but she became one of the most successful rulers in England's history. In retrospect, Henry's love for Anne Boleyn didn't just ruin his life, but changed the entire country. What would have been the fate of England if Henry had made different decisions? What role would Anne Boleyn have played in history if she had survived?